This is Big Ideas Welcome Season 3, where we are pairing business legends with ambitious founders to dig into big ideas, successes, failures, and lessons learned. I'm Chris McAdoo, and today's episode, From Lab to Launch. If it wasn't hard, it wouldn't be worth doing. With Corey, Tyree, and Nicholas Sokol. Corey is the founder and CEO of Trillium Renewable Chemicals. Corey and his team at Trillium are revolutionizing the chemical industry with sustainable plant-based solutions. They're building a $38 million facility in Texas, and they're turning this cutting-edge sustainable research into real-world impact at scale. Dr. Nicholas Sokol is the innovative mind behind Algeo, where he's developing microalgae-based biofertilizers that make agriculture more resilient, more naturally regenerative, literally putting science to work. You see, Corey and Nick are tackling tough challenges head-on, transforming complex sciences into sustainable breakthroughs, reshaping industries, all while building stronger, more resilient communities. Let's get to work. Corey, Tyree, Nick Sokol, it's an absolute pleasure to have you guys with us here on the Big Ideas Welcome podcast. The theme of today's episode, From Lab to Launch. If it wasn't hard, it wouldn't be worth doing. Both of you guys, you're in businesses that are not easy to explain. And as Corey, right before we got on mic, Corey was explaining how it's not exactly something you bring up at a Friday dinner party, if you want to be invited back.
Yeah.
But both of you operate in a world that actually underpins so much of what we do every day, and we may never know. So I'm going to start out the conversation with a question from a friend of ours that I think you both may know, Lily Tinch. Lily Tinch heads up the Spark Innovation Center from the University of Tennessee Research Park and Research Foundation. And Lily says, a question for you guys. They say no business plan survives initial contact with a customer, right? Can you speak to how your thoughts on what your product, your value would be changed when you actually started out there dealing with the customers that you wanted to serve? Sort of where did you think it would go and where did it end up going? Corey, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so we could probably spend the whole show on this one question, right? But I'll keep it short. I mean, here's one thing that's different about hard tech, okay? You think about cement, electricity, chemicals, products have been around for ages, right? There actually is less of a sort of a customer orientation than you might expect, right? What do you want when you get electricity? You want voltage, frequency, the lights to turn on, man.
Yeah.
Right? Just deliver, keep the lights on. And I'm not going to say that chemicals are just like that, but my point is that this idea that sort of customers, your question, where it's coming from is this idea that customers are the single biggest influencer of all your business decisions, and when you talk to them, it's going to change everything. I actually don't know that that's actually true in chemicals, so I'll push on this a little bit.
Let's go.
So the idea is that, you know what really changes things? When it goes from a research endeavor to a business, and you hire people. So those first couple of employees, you think about the changes that are happening there, the first days where they're reading over these things. And these people are experts, right? This is all they've ever done is make chemicals. They get their mitts on this thing, things really change. So I'm not saying customers don't have any impact, but I actually think that the biggest needle mover actually is sort of more internal and employees.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, so when you're hiring, when you bring people on that may have a similar background or maybe a different background, they may unlock something you hadn't thought of, or they may completely challenge something you thought was a core principle of what you're doing.
And so, so this is why we could spend the whole show on this. So think about this, man. So I played Monopoly with my kids not long ago, right? You guys play Monopoly?
Yeah.
That game, I'm sure, is still going on.
Yeah. But there's this thing, right? If you draw a chance card, you got to go back 3 places.
Yeah.
Okay, hear me out. So if you make these changes, It's great when it's in the first year of the company, but here's the thing about hard tech. If you go through lab and pilot and demo, right? And somebody raises their hand and says, I got a breakthrough innovation. It's year 4. Guess what happens, guys? You got to go back to the very beginning and repeat that very expensive path. You can't afford that. You must innovate early. You must get your plan together really early on, and then just execute, man. Flat lines, no big swings, right? This is a key point in hard tech that makes it different.
Interesting. Yeah, I would agree with most of that. I would say my experience on the business model exposure side is that, my business model did not survive at all first exposure. And I think just in terms of talking with customers initially and then getting the first prototype of the product out there, we very quickly got feedback that, this isn't the thing. This isn't what we want. And so those customers were very crucial for implementing changes that improve the overall technology for others. And so you can take a couple of steps in order to make sure you're utilizing that feedback appropriately. And the first thing is are these solutions, do they fit to everybody else who would be using this product, or is it a customized solution for one individual? And I know the difference that stands out between Corey and I think a lot is a lot of my work is influenced very heavily across different geographic locations. So dealing with agriculture, you have different soil types, you have different climate types, climate zones, you have different growing periods and regimes, and all of that creates variability in how you serve your product to the customer. But the one thing that is kind of a defining trait for all of those customers is they want to see success. They want to see a measurable impact from your product when you use it. And so for me, it's been kind of an innovate the whole way kind of step, because we're constantly looking at new pieces of information, new pieces of technology that we can imbue and implement and then provide to our customers. And so I think being the type of company we are, we've really heavily benefited from being able to quickly make those changes and adaptations without being too bogged down in one particular method. And we're small enough yet. We just got 2 employees this year, so it's like we haven't had that many employees to have that much feedback. But we're small enough at this point that if a customer comes to us and says, well, this isn't exactly how we do things typically. We would be looking for something along the lines of X, Y, and Z. We're able to go ahead and implement that pretty easily for that customer to help their needs.
To that point, I'll kind of throw it back to Corey then, is you are in that phase right now. It's literally like he has his first 2 people. He's in that research phase through Spark, through Innovation Crossroads. How did you know when you needed to sort of put the pencil down, as it were, and execute?
Yeah, man. So I think that you're asking Nick and I the same question, and you're getting 2 answers, in which you should,
Which is right?
Because he's
absolutely
in a different phase, and so I would just say that the answer that I think I would have given at the same equivalent stage that Nick was at would have been almost identical. We're innovating like crazy, things are changing like crazy because you can. You're not so far along, right? You're not sort of at a point of no return. So. Just want to make that clear, right? And then, so your question here is just this idea of like, all right, what is a permissible change? Look, man, you got to be really careful about it. Just think about it like your home sort of like decisions, right? Like, should I buy a car or not? Are you thinking about buying a car because you're restless? Are you thinking about buying a car because you actually need a car? Maybe you've had kids, you need more room, these kinds of things. Yeah. You have to be really careful in these companies, right? I call it shiny object syndrome, right? You start chasing all these shiny objects because you're bored, and that sort of like that grind of that execution of that day-to-day, I've got to build this plant, right? You got to be careful not to fall in that trap because you won't ever build the plant and make the product, right? And so, guys, I would say that one of the things that, it feels like it comes up every week, if not every day at Trillium, is don't get restless, don't chase shiny objects, stay grounded, build this plant, man. You're building a plant in Texas, and I want all eyes on that.
Gotcha.
Right.
So you have you have that particular finish line right now. All eyes on that plant. And tell me, actually, and when we even say this audience, like let's actually step it back. Let's see, what does that even mean? Meaning, like that plant is going to produce X amount of your material to go, and what kind of impact will that make? So, tell people like what that even means.
20-second elevator pitch, right? Trillium's scaling up a chemical technology. We make chemicals.
Yeah.
So the business model is super simple. Make a chemical product, sell it for profit, right? So that part I hope is clear to the audience. But to get there, right, you've got to de-risk this thing. Cost a lot of money to build these plants. They're super capital intensive, right? So how do you do that? What is the process that you go through? So everything I'm talking about, and probably didn't adequately explain, is about de-risking the technology.
Well, on the hard tech side of it, versus say like just the software or the, you could argue one way or the other how effective the move fast and break things process is, and it seems like in this world, everything is expensive.
Relatively.
Yeah.
I mean, so this is sort of like I'll offer you a passionate answer.
Yes.
Right? So the software guys, which let me be honest, I'm jealous of, right? I wish I was in the software business, and here's why. I can make a beta version and it doesn't work. No big deal. I'll go fix it, right? I can fix a bug. We're making chemicals here. You can't have betas that don't work. You can't have bugs. There's serious safety issues at stake here. So you got to make this work the first time out, okay? And so that point of like no betas, right? It's a key point in this industry that
Yeah, I concur. I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of that with hard tech, especially when you're sending machinery and equipment out into the field, people want it to work. You're one of those, a big value proposition that people often look at is time and money, right? Those are the two things. Are you saving them on that? If you send them broken stuff, you're wasting their time and their money, because then they've wasted time trying to figure out how it works.
Right.
And they've wasted money buying it, and now they have to go and find another solution completely. So I do agree with that. I think it's very important to have that stuff figured out before you send it. And you'll always have an early adopter who's willing to test. That allows you to iterate on that technology, get some feedback, and improve it. But before you aim for mass adoption or viral popularity of your product, it's very good to have it well tested.
Well, and Corey got to do the 20-second. This is what we do, So just again, it's one of those like, Nick, put that in context. What do you do and who's it for?
Yeah. So Algeo is making biofertilizers from microalgae and bacteria consortia in order to boost agricultural yields, productivity, and reduce water input.
There you go.
Yeah.
You have practiced that, my friend.
So much.
All right.
Innovation crossroads right
there we
there.
go. Innovation crossroads. So a lot of people may or may not know that there are national labs all over the country that focus on different things. Of course, you're familiar with Oak Ridge National Labs because you watched Oppenheimer and everything. But we do, in this particular region, there's a lot of, right now, there's advanced manufacturing, there is agricultural technology, nuclear power, different sources, right? There's a lot of things happening. But these labs, a lot of them have programs focusing around those early adopters. The folks that may be willing to take more of a risk on the front end before it goes, but just, before it touches the customer, before it touches the industry. So hats off to, all of the IC cohorts and friends of this region that have been able to take some of that. Like, Corey, let's talk about, I love, what a crazy challenging thing to be able to explain what something should do. And when somebody says, essentially like, can you show me? And you're like, No, I can if you want to. Oh, I can
really.
if you want.
Here's some chemicals.
Yeah, but how did? Let's talk about a traction and a scalability. So when you knew that you could take, and I'm going to say it. No, I'm not. Say it. Say the word.
So Trillium Chemicals plans to make acrylonitrile. If you really want to sound like an insider, man, just say acrylo. You making some acrylo?
Oh, acrylo?
Yeah, we make acrylo.
I got some acrylo in my pocket. But what that is a product that's in almost everything that we touch every day, from Legos to the bumper on your car.
Yeah,
We may not know that, but it's part of everything that we do. So when you started raising to actually take this technology to market, to start building this the facility in Texas, what were some of the early moves that you made to put yourself on the road to? Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have raised around $38 million now. To take this to market in a big way. What were some of those first moves you made that made it make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fun to you think about the moves that sort of if you Google fundraising for startups, you'll see a bunch of moves that people are going to recommend, and we probably made some of those, maybe a lot of those, maybe all of those. But I think maybe more interesting is what moves do you think actually don't work? Where does common wisdom sort of break down when you're talking about hard tech? And so I've got, there's another one we can spend half an hour on, right? But so here's one. So you talked about sort of this idea that's kind of it's hard to explain, right? So when your business idea doesn't make you the life of the dinner party, how do you get people interested in it? And so if you Google fundraising, you look at the Airbnb pitch. Man, it's cool, it's slick, the colors are beautiful, minimalist design. I wish I had that, but here's the thing: if I've got an idea to reduce the cost of gasoline. Dude, you don't want to hear about the total addressable market and the cusp. Yeah. You want to hear if the technology works.
Wow.
Because if it does, you got to be some level of incompetent not to make money on that, right? So people in the world that I'm in are going to camp out and talk to you about technology. So you got to be ready for it, and you got to have all the answers, because that's how you drive credibility. And so it took me a while, man. I'm telling this story in retrospect, right? Oh yeah, everything worked, and I'm telling people how to do it, dude. My first 6 months were, a lot of failures. Okay,
Sounds typical.
One thing that I figured out that I stopped doing, I stopped falling into the trap of feeling like I have to entertain everybody. I just told the story as it is. This is what we do. I get it. We're making chemicals. It's not going to blow everybody away. But for some people, it's exactly what they're looking for. And those are the people, not the people at the Friday night dinner party, that you should care a lot about.
Right.
Yeah.
How does that inform your thinking, Nick? Because you talking about yields, talking to farmers, talking to folks that very much care.
Yeah.
Does this work? And even you said it. It's if you send them something that doesn't work, now not only have you wasted their time, but now they have to replace it and find something else. So what does that make you,
right. Yeah. It's confusing. There's no straightforward path. I agree with Corey. I think he put it very eloquently. There's within that first 6 months, you're failing a lot. You're taking a lot of losses, and all of those are meant to be learning experiences. And over time, eventually, you get a good feel for how you should go about communicating this with people. It's interesting that you talked about the funding side of it as well. I have a cousin who I told a while ago that I was setting out on an entrepreneur journey, to make it sound mystical. And she was, one of the things she said to me on the phone when we were talking about it was, "Oh, so you're going to start dancing for the dollar." And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And she's like, "Well, you got to talk to a lot of people, and you got to put on a show in order to get them to like you and like your product." And Corey made mention of, it's not so much about getting them to, yes, you want them to like you. That's an important part of being an entrepreneur, but it's really so much about the benefit of the product. And if you can easily communicate that and show that it works, you have evidence that shows that it works, then that's really what's more important than anything else, because they can like you all they want, and that might get you some sales, but long term, it's not going to lead to success for the business. In the agricultural space, what a lot of people want is a relationship with someone who is an expert, or a company who is an expert. And the reason for that is because if they have an easy way of getting information for steps they can take in order to improve their processes without having to heavily invest in new equipment or tools or labor, which is a huge issue in the ag sector, they're all for it. So they want to hear ideas that are easily implementable and testable without having to invest a lot of money. And that was something I also popped into mind when Corey was talking as well, was with hard tech. Another challenge is when you look at something like software and the Airbnb and the consumer side of Amazon and eBay and those things. Nowadays, it's not as difficult to set something up. It's affordable, right? But with hard tech, it can be expensive and cost prohibitive to even make a prototype that you take to market to show efficacy. And oftentimes, the founder may come in and be very technically capable, have full knowledge of the subject, very well-rounded individual, but doesn't have the resources to actually build the prototype.
Gotcha.
And so things kind of flounder, in the water. And so that is also a pretty big challenge to overcome as well. And how I kind of overcame those challenges was just to try to, stay as nimble and lean with how I prototype, try to learn as much as I can without outsourcing, but it not taking up too much time. And I know that's not something that everybody can do, but one of the greatest things I did for Algeo was I taught myself how to do 3D printing. And so all of the system casings for our hardware are 3D printed because that's how I started producing them myself, was in my basement with a 3D printer. Wow. And it's things like that. I think nowadays the biggest challenge is, figuring out how to utilize resources capably in order to get you from point A to point B, because you're not going straight to B.
Hi everyone, my name's Kelsey Walker. I'm the Communications Director for the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center. Thank you to the Innovate 65 Alliance for their support in everything that we do, including this podcast. So Chris, tell us more about the Innovate 65 Alliance.
Everybody from ORNL to the University of Tennessee and TVA and so many support organizations like the KEC came together to celebrate, to showcase, to collaborate on this region as a great place for entrepreneurs, technologists, scientists to come and start their businesses, to grow them, and to stay right here with increased access to technology, expertise, capital. 865 Week is the region's kind of big signature event, and the Alliance coordinates other activities all throughout the year. Everything from pitch competitions to educational opportunities and social events. Everybody can learn more at innov865.com.
That's INNOV 865.com.
And Corey, tell me, you're talking about getting the product from sort of that lab all the way to efficacy. That could be 3 years, 5 years. I mean, so that's, again, for folks that are unfamiliar with this industry, that's quick. I mean, say something from 1 to 3 years or something. That's actually quick. So you're talking 3, 5, 7, and you're talking about a long road with a lot of stops along the way. And Corey, how have you been able to keep not only yourself, but your team and the company and your investors focused? Now that you're getting towards that plant over that long haul, what systems or what ways of thinking have you avoided the shiny object problem and been able to stay focused for so long?
Yeah, so, Nick described this kind of chicken before the egg problem, right? You need all this infrastructure. It costs a lot of money. You got to have the money to get the people and the infrastructure. So what do you do? For one thing, I think, so this is true for hard tech and the software guys too. You want to stay capital light. Do I have a lot of assets? Yes, for the Series B company. But But I try not to buy everything, right? There's infrastructure. You mentioned national labs. There's infrastructure out there, centralized infrastructure that's sort of plug and play, available for many different American businesses to use. We try to make use of all of that. So that's one thing we've done. We don't build everything, right? Why am I in Texas? Well, because they have a lot of capital assets that I don't want to buy, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not building buildings in Texas. I'm using their laboratory space, right? Our partners, the host site. So there's ways to sort of go about this efficiently. That's one answer to your question. The other thing, though, I sort of want to push on a little bit here, though, is this idea of time. So it's not just the penalty that it takes so long, right? So we're talking about return on investment here.
Right.
If it takes a long time, the longer it takes, the bigger returns you need to get your money back. You also have no revenue for years, right? So when people generally ask me about hard tech, setting expectations, what's it going to take? 10 years, $50 million.
Okay.
That's the answer, roughly. Okay? And so you got to set expectations, right? But the other thing you've got to do, though, is have the guts to stay focused. And what I mean by that is every time someone presents that shiny object, you don't have to chase it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to. If what you have is good enough, like the allure of optimization is such a challenge. Here's why. Most of these businesses, cement, electricity, been doing it for ages.
Sure.
They're still improving. They're still improving. You've got to accept that there's nothing you can do to sort of boom, this is the final version. If you wait that long, man, you're going out of business, right? Wow. You got to get there fast. You got to 80-20, good enough, move forward. It's got to be safe, but once it's good enough, go build something.
Yeah. A lot of people like to say move fast and break things, but I think with hard tech, it's like move fast and kind of break things.
Move fast and build along the way.
Facebook can move fast and break things, but
if you're in chemicals and you say move fast and break things, people are going to get scared.
That's right.
I mean, it's just dangerous industry, right? So I mean, I don't love the move fast and break things. I'm more of the 80-20. It's good enough. The performance is good enough. We're talking about performance here, right?
Okay.
Yes, I would agree with that as well.
And so your guys, both of the industries that you serve, there's some, regulatory hurdles. There's supply chain challenges around how do you get, the other difference between something that you guys do and say a software or a lot of other businesses is you make things that weigh something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Physical
objects.
It's a physical thing.
Materials.
So there's a supply chain. There's, like I say, there's regulations. What are some of again, it's that long-term thinking. Mm-hmm. And I'll go for Nick because you're in the middle of this, right? What are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced and been able to move past, or that you're still in the process of learning?
I think regulatory-wise, every state kind of has different laws for agricultural products. Some states and regions obviously do tend to be more alike than others, but if we compare Tennessee to California, for example, there are a lot of different regulations that go into effect when you're looking at agricultural products. Demand is different across states, so prices are different depending on who you're selling to. So that's something you have to take into account. So you can have a baseline price, but your price that you sell at to somebody in Texas might be drastically different from your price that you might sell to somebody in Maine, just because they can source it locally or source something else cheaper.
Gotcha.
That doesn't come from as far. The other thing is, a lot of the, attention that Algeo has received over the past couple of years, I've been working on it, stemmed from supply chain issues related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And then has endured because of geopolitical conflicts across the world. And that's put a hamper on reliable sources of fertilizer products and materials and chemical ingredients that produce fertilizers. And so there's become a very big push to create a reliable and efficient domestic source of fertilizer that not only reduces environmental impact, but is also still as effective as those other products that we are unable to source from abroad or unable to source financially feasible manner. And that leads to a couple of benefits and a couple of cons. The benefits is, obviously there's demand because people are looking for those products. The cons is that you've had a lot of people who've come along and sold snake oil, stuff that doesn't work. And the other con is you have to come in with a lot of data before people will kind of take you on your word. And getting that data, especially in ag, it's not like you can go into the lab and look into a microscope and say, "Eureka! I've got the optimal formula and it's going into the soil." It's more of you have to actually take it out into the field, put it on the plant, let the plant grow, harvest the plant, do tissue analysis on the plant, run some soil sample tests, see what the difference is relative to non-treated, and then that's your data, and you can iterate off of that. So it's a slower process, and then regulatory-wise, I mean, it's just dealing with the idiosyncrasies across the different states, and we're not too thick in the weeds with that yet, but it is something that we are already targeting on how we can easily overcome it. Being organic, not using synthetic products in our product helps because that means we don't have too many challenges to face when moving into new markets. But overall, every state is kind of unique, and every farmer and their needs is unique, which is part of the challenge.
Yeah, regulatory environment, right? I mean, the impacts on Trillium. I mean, so, I think we sort of like the hard tech guys who are always talking about how hard it is, hard tech. But actually, maybe one of the advantages of hard tech, all these capital assets, right, that we're talking about, it's actually kind of an advantage from a regulation standpoint because, you can't move this giant aircraft carrier that, if you think about all this infrastructure we have, it's supposed to be around for a while. You build this stuff, the capital asset, of a chemical plant assumption, 40 years. So you can't pull all these levers and just turn things on and off in this environment that I'm in. But let me say something about the regulatory environment. Does it matter? Yes. One thing both parties are supportive of is jobs, right? Mm-hmm. So what you see happen in chemicals is the policy levers that are pulled are different, but sort of like our entire industry sort of done away with when we have changes in regimes. No, right? They still exist, but what's being incentivized is different. So you do have to make adjustments, right? But I think somehow that the impact to say a Trillium or a company like Trillium is maybe exaggerated a little bit. Certainly an impact, but not huge.
Well, so I'll sort of wrap up our conversation with the next sort of couple of questions, but we've talked about where you got started, both of your roads to get where you are, and now some of the things that you think about on a daily basis, from the literal thing you're making to the regulatory issues, all that. Starting today, what does success look like for you? For the company, but then also I'd love to get your thoughts on what does success look like for the industry and the community that you're supporting as well, because we all exist in a context, if it's supply chain, if it's a tiered manufacturing, anything. And so what does that success look like in 3 years or 5 years?
Yeah, so for Trillium, it's super simple, right? We're going to build this plant in Texas. We're going to build a bigger plant somewhere. We're going to make the product, and we're going to sell it. So, I mean, one of the benefits of a simple business model like that is, it's pretty clear what you got to do, right? Doesn't make it any easier, right? You got to raise a lot of money, hire people, and build this thing, but that's what we're going to do, and that's going to happen in the next 3 years. Wow, so okay. How we get there, I mean, that's where it gets, I think, more interesting. But I think, though, you ask about success, and so, I mean, I think there's success for Trillium, and, we're here in Knoxville, right?
Yeah.
So let me say something about, how this all fits with Knoxville. I mean, I don't like doing this in isolation, right? I mean, I'm doing this in a community, right? You and I have had lunch several times together. Many people you work with, we've had lunch together. I sit on these panels, right? Trillium in isolation, it's fun. Don't get me wrong, I love it, right? But I'm part of this community here, and it matters to me whether, like, what we're doing, like, how we're all connected. So I don't want there just to be, like, Trillium successful, right? I hope Nick's successful. There's many folks that you and I are meeting with, hope they're successful.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, my vision is to have many successes here in Knoxville, right?
Yeah.
And I think to be part of a community and not just one big win or a few, right? But a lot of wins. And I think, so the success and how you define that, of course I want Trillium to be successful. I poured everything into this, right? But there also needs to be like this bigger impact on the community, man. It's more fun, right? Doing this is fun, right?
Yeah, I agree, 100%. I don't think anybody comes in, with the goal of failing, at least not outright. There'll be some micro failures, so to speak. You'll learn things along the way and get better and improve and do better. But nobody just comes as like, I'm gonna found this company. I'm totally gonna fail it. Like it's burning out, within the first year. So it's very true. I think for me, when I first envisioned starting a company, I was coming from academia, and I wanted to move kind of from that ivory tower of publications into doing something that had an impact on people and environment. My background expertise, what I studied was like computational climatology, so doing a bunch of fancy algorithms to examine climate variability across space and time. And it was just so, kind of out of touch. I remember publishing a paper, and I told my mom about it. And she was like, well, read me some part of it. And I read her the part, and she was like, I don't understand what you just said. And, that hurt me to my core because, we don't do things just to do them. We do them because we want to have an impact on people to an extent. Yeah. Even, the most selfish person, the Scrooges who start businesses just to make money, ultimately they want to have an impact on people, and that impact is, loyal customers who keep coming back and buying from them. And so I looked at business as a vehicle to creating that impact on people's lives, using the science and the knowledge that I've acquired over my training. And putting that into practice to help people with novel solutions. So for me, success really looks like having a positive impact in some capacity on the environment, having a positive impact on people's lives. There is a lot of information coming out now. National Geographic, I think a week or so ago, put out an article about how the nutrient content of our food across the planet is slowly diminishing. And that's
crazy, man.
It's wild, and that's because of eroding soil health. We've used the soil so much without replenishing and making sure that the health of the soil remains of good quality, that now crops that we're growing, they're not as nutritious, and they don't contain the same level of things like probiotics that they used to. And so what does that mean? It means that people are getting more inflammatory diseases. It means that people are having more medical issues than they've had in the past. I hate to say the controversial word, but climate change, is also contributing to that. Climate change plays a role in impacting the quality of the food we eat. And everybody eats food. Even if you don't enjoy eating food or you don't like to eat a lot of food, everybody has to eat. Everybody has to drink water at some point. And if that's not stable, we're in the 21st century. We've got generative AI that can produce 500-word blog posts. We've got podcasts. We've got electronic fund transfer. But if our food supply isn't stable after, thousands of years of humans engaging with agriculture, it's a really telling, sad problem and story for humanity, and it doesn't portend to a positive future. And so I don't think I'm going to fix everything. I think that would be far too egotistical of me to think that Algeo will absolutely fix the entire agricultural, industry. I think that's way too lofty a goal. But can I have a measurable impact that, I can sit back and somebody can come up to me and say, hey, I used your product to grow some tomatoes in my backyard, and they were delicious. They were amazing. I had an abundance of them. I didn't have to, go to the grocery store to buy them. I live in a food desert, and being able to grow reliably in my backyard means a lot to me. And to me, I would be able to be very satisfied with something like that. Making money is fantastic. Obviously, I do want to make money with this and, have some semblance of financial independence, however that looks like. But ultimately, the impact is what pushes me forward. Once you work long enough, and I'm sure Corey would agree with this, once you work long enough with something, it becomes very hard to quit because you get people who start looking up to you kind of as that person who does that and carries that message forward. And, looking at it from the lens of, it's just a company, I can always fail and go start another one. It becomes challenging to do that. It's almost, like your life project, and you want to see it succeed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man! So we just went, so the thing I like here, I just make this comment and then I'm going to ask our final question, is that you went far upstream. Meaning there are the particular things that you're going to do, but then you go down that scientific sort of exploration of like, but if, but what if, but what if? And we can either make those decisions, to be independent, with energy, with food, with all those things, or we don't. And decisions have consequences one way or the other. So anyway, I love that perspective is just really, really interesting. And then Corey, the way that you guys are thinking about the way that, where do you build? How? Why? Who is coming along with you, right? In that growth. And I think both of you spoke so well to the power of that big upstream impact, right? To the communities, to the world, but really what matters, like you're saying here, Nick, is did you make an impact today and how did you do it? Same thing. It's like, were you able to move one step closer along with your team to where you're trying to go? So those small steps that eventually add up to those big wins. So the last question is just going to be, if you've ever watched a pitch, or if you guys, out there listen to watch Shark Tank or anything.
Great show. Love that.
There you go. Or if you've ever sold, you realize that most folks remember one thing, right? One important thing. So Corey, for the folks listening to this conversation, if they remembered one thing, if they could have a key takeaway, if you will, from Corey Tyree, Trillium Chemicals, what would that be?
Man, I think the one thing that's unique about Trillium is that we've got a small team. We've raised $38 million. Been doing this for 4 years, building a 60-foot tall plant in Texas. We're doing it with 6 people.
Beautiful.
Doing it with 6 people, and how we're doing it, I think, is very unique. It's all virtual. I hire the best people I can find. Wow. All of them are very, very experienced people. These are people who know how to build chemical plants. It's all they've done. So small team, I think this is the future, right? Small team, yeah. Highly specialized, very nimble, right? Super focused. That's Trillium.
Mic drop. I don't think I can match that.
That's pretty good.
I know. That was really good. I don't even know what to say. Algeo's lost in the algaeverse. There you go.
No, actually, Nick, I'll give you a build-up for that one. I think that there is something to be said for anybody that is listening. There's a lot of folks that I think are rightly worried about, let's say, technology that's here. If it's generative AI, if it's and all these kind of things.
I want this question.
I know, but we gotta wrap it up. But we can, if you really want it.
I'll share some time with you. Don't worry.
There you go. Yeah. But or maybe that's a whole other episode, or maybe we'll do something fun and talk about it. But the thing that is about to happen, and this is both from, I talk with a lot of people. And the power for smaller teams to grow impactful companies is going to, it's going to multiply not just by ones and twos, but by multiples of multiples. Yeah. And to be able to put people in the position to say, like, if you're hard tech, if you're soft, if you're opening an ice cream shop, it doesn't matter. The rules are different and they can change to be in your favor. Smaller, more powerful, more nimble teams where you pay people what they are worth because they bring that work to the table, right? They are appreciated and they get to grow along with you. And I think that is exciting, man.
Yeah. And think about it like this, right? I mean, so Nick's talking about ag, right? We talk about the agrarian society our great-great-grandparents worked in. You talk about the industrial society. So you're in the agrarian society still. I'm a remnant of the industrial society. You're talking about the post-industrial society where all this generative AI changes everything. So we're still making things. There's still materials in the world. There's still that laptop. There's still machines, right? There's still food. We still need food, right? And so how do these societies, I mean, if you think about it, the agrarian society, it was like a light switch, man. I mean, we got off the plow and never returned, right? Went to the factory. Now we're going to this post-industrial society, very customer-oriented services, businesses. We still got to make this material stuff. How are we going to do it, right? It's an interesting time. How are we going to make our food? How are we going to make our materials? To me, that's what he's talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
That's the big stuff. All right, Nick, do we give you enough time? The one thing that you want the folks to remember?
I guess I would say the one thing I want folks to remember is things are changing very rapidly. I think ultimately at the end of the day, what you have to remember is that there's no end or no limit to the amount of goods, material, technology that's out there for you to interact with. But the soil that we utilize to grow our crops, whether they be edible crops or even crops that are used for materials themselves, needs to be healthy. And so Algeo is really focusing on figuring out how we can quickly replenish soils to make them healthy, to produce things that we need for everyday life.
Nick Sokol, Corey Tyree, thank you so much for joining us today. And for those of you out there who are, you've got through this this conversation, and there's a lot of things we talked about that may be unfamiliar, that may be new, right? About soil, about chemical, about all those things. And I like to remind everybody, y'all, I was a painting major, right? So a lot of this stuff, it is a pleasure and a privilege to be the dumbest guy in the room. And I hope that when you hear something that you're unfamiliar with, that challenges something that you may have thought, go learn more about it, right? Go get started and learn more and get smarter and ask better questions. You know, learn for yourself. And I think that's an entrepreneur's way, certainly a maker's way to move forward. So again, thanks, y'all. My name is Chris McAdoo. I wash windows at an organization that I'm very proud of, the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center in the heart of downtown Knoxville, Tennessee, otherwise known as the Maker City. And I hope all of us are out there thinking about making the things that matter to us, making an impact on the world. And if we're going to do it, let's get to work.